Well, political leaders and tribal elders are convening in Kabul, Afghanistan this week to discuss the future of U.S. troops in the country. The meeting is known as Loya Jirga. More than 2,000 tribal elders will vote on whether or not to give U.S. troops immunity in Afghanistan beyond 2014. Without such an agreement, the U.S. has threatened to pull all troops out of the country and let Afghan troops take on the Taliban on their own. President Hamid Karzai and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry have already reached a draft agreement to provide immunity for U.S. troops for at least another decade. Now the tribal elders have their hand at modifying the deal. After their vote, it will go on to Afghanistan's parliament and then back to Karzai for his signature. But in a surprising turn, Karzai announced today that he plans to defer the signing to his successor after the April elections. For more on this meeting, I was joined earlier by Kwiatkowski, a retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I first asked her how important is the decision coming out of the Loya Jirga, and would it likely pass?
I don't know how important it is. It's more of a, in many ways, it's more of a show, kind of a show on the part of Karzai to show that the people are with him, or at least he's hoping. I don't think that the Loya Jirga or the parliament is going to be very happy with the lack of immunity, the immunity of the American soldiers. They're not going to like that much in the way that Iraq did not like that. In fact, that was the cause of our troops leaving on time, as it were, from Iraq.
So as a U.S. military Air Force veteran, how important is immunity for troops?
Well, from an American perspective, it's incredibly important, okay? Mistakes happen, and the habit of war, the habit of urban warfare in particular, the use of drones, this is not something that, it's a can of worms, really. We don't want our people exposed. We work very hard and have for decades to protect our people from, when they're deployed around the world, to protect them from the legal systems in the country in which they're deployed. This is a habit on the American side. It is to protect our troops, and it is to protect our political leaders as well. But from the perspective of the Afghans or any other country that has American troops there, as we've seen in the case of Japan in the past several years, it is very important that these countries be able to hold these troops accountable for their actions.
And what type of immunity are we talking about here? Is there anything that wouldn't be immune under these the past regulations that they had and this future agreement?
I'm not sure. I did look at the agreement today and read through it. It seems very standard, much as the kinds of agreements that we have with all kinds of countries. And normally what that means is our troops are vulnerable if they're outside of base in the community, doing crimes or conducting their mission in a rash way or a way that somehow causes the death or injury to people or property there. It's pretty typical. This agreement is actually not unusual. It's the kind of thing that we do everywhere we have troops. So it's important to us. But from the perspective of the Afghans, this is 12 years of, in the view of many of them, occupation. So what we consider to be a very normal and routine type of immunity to them looks like basically free hand, that we have a free hand, that this is business as usual in a bad way, and it's something that they would like to change, and it's an insult. It's an insult to their sovereignty.
Now, another sticking point in the agreement has been the continuation of night raids in the country. What's the issue, and how could it potentially be resolved?
It could be resolved if we would stop doing them. That's pretty simple. The way that we are conducting anti-terror operations, as we would call them, really does bump into the livelihood, the just day-to-day activities of Afghans, and I think it's fair to say that they are very weary of war. I mean, if you think of the past 25, almost 30 years of Afghan history, they have been, in one way or another, at war, and they're tired of it. So night raids is a wartime activity. Now, I thought there was supposed to be peace. I think the Afghans thought there was supposed to be peace by now. The fact that there isn't, and the fact that night raids are emblematic of a wartime operation, yeah, I'm sure that they don't want these.
Now, the major reason that the Afghans want American troops to stick around is to continue to train Afghan troops so that they can protect themselves against the Taliban. But on the other hand, Karzai's government has been reaching out to the Taliban for talks. So would signing this agreement make talks with the Taliban in order to negotiate a future peace be more difficult?
Yes, it would. And I think part of what you're looking at with this agreement and part of Karzai's action today in declaring that he will delay signature of any approved agreement until after the next president is elected, this is code name for Karzai needs American protection. You have to remember, Karzai was our guy, okay, in Kabul. We put him there in, I think, early December of 2001. He's been there almost a dozen years. Yes, he's been elected, but he is backed up and supported by the Americans. He really is looking, and the people that are dependent on American aid, contracts, criminal activities, whatever it is that we're associated with over there, the people in Afghanistan, there's particularly politicians and leaders in Afghanistan and kind of the middle class, if they are dependent on the Americans, they are kind of in a precarious position. And many of them, and I'd say Karzai is part of this, are looking for ways to disentangle with this American dependency. And who's going to be left? We already know the most powerful unified group that has any potential to lead that country, whether we like it or not, is the Taliban. So if you want to be an Afghan citizen, you need to butter the bread on both sides on this one.
Absolutely. Kwiatkowski, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for weighing in on this very complex, very delicate issue.